Stop scrolling for 1 second, because something happened right before you clicked on this video that you were not aware of. A thought tried to talk you out of watching this. Maybe it told you this is nothing new. Maybe it told you that you're too busy. Maybe it whispered that you already know all of this. And yet here you are, still watching, still listening. Because some part of you knew this video was not an accident. You did not find this by chance. You were led here. And what I'm about to tell you in the next few minutes is going to explain something that has been happening in your life for months, maybe years. Something you felt but could never name. Something that made you question your faith, your purpose, your sanity, and even your worth. There is a war happening around you right now that has nothing to do with the visible world, and the reason your life has felt heavier, harder, and lonelier lately is not bad luck. It is not a coincidence. It is not just stress. It is something far older, far more calculated, and far more personal than you have ever imagined. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why it is happening to you, and more importantly, what it actually means about who you are. Let me ask you something before we go further. Have you ever noticed that right when you decide to change your life, everything suddenly gets harder? Right when you decide to pray more, distractions multiply. Right when you decide to chase a dream, the people closest to you start doubting you out loud. Right when you decide to heal, old wounds resurface with a vengeance. Right when you decide to build something meaningful, your body gets tired, your mind gets foggy, and your motivation disappears overnight. Most people call this bad timing. Most people call this life being unfair. But what if I told you that this resistance is not random at all? What if I told you that the moment you were chosen for something greater, a target was placed on your back that you could not see? And the war against you did not begin when things got hard. It began the second you were set apart. This is the part nobody talks about in church, in self-help videos, or in motivational content. Everyone loves to talk about blessings, about purpose, about destiny, about being chosen. But almost nobody talks about the price of being chosen. And almost nobody warns you about the invisible war that follows every single calling. C.S. Lewis understood this better than almost any writer of his time. In his classic work, he imagined a world where senior demons train younger ones, not through dramatic possessions or terrifying nightmares, but through something far quieter and far more effective: the slow, patient erosion of a person's faith through distraction, discouragement, comparison, and exhaustion. Lewis understood that the enemy does not need to destroy you with one massive blow. All the enemy needs to do is keep you slightly off balance, slightly distracted, slightly discouraged, day after day, until years pass and you look back and realize you never became who you were meant to be. That is the real strategy, not a lightning bolt, a slow leak. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If your life still feels manageable, if nothing ever pushes back against you, if every dream you have ever had came easily and every door opened without resistance, that might not be peace. That might simply mean you have not yet stepped into anything that threatens the darkness. But the moment you decide to rise, the moment you decide to heal generational patterns, the moment you decide to walk closer to your purpose, you become dangerous to whatever has kept people around you asleep for generations. And dangerous things get resisted. Think about your own life for a second. Think about the exact moment things started shifting. Was it after you made a decision to change? Was it after you started praying again, after years of silence? Was it after you finally admitted what you actually wanted out of life? Was it after you cut off a toxic relationship or habit that was quietly destroying you? I want you to notice something. The resistance almost never comes before the decision. It comes after. That is not a coincidence. That is confirmation. The attack is not proof that you are lost. The attack is proof that you are finally being seen. Now I know what some of you are thinking right now. This sounds like something people say to make suffering feel meaningful. Maybe you are tired of hearing that hard times build character. Maybe you are exhausted, genuinely exhausted, and you do not want another spiritual explanation. You just want relief. I understand that, and I am not here to romanticize your pain. But stay with me, because what I'm about to explain next is not about glorifying suffering. It is about giving you the one piece of information that changes how you experience every hard season for the rest of your life. And once you understand this, you will never look at resistance the same way again. The enemy does not waste effort on people who are not going anywhere. Think about that sentence again. The enemy does not waste effort on people who are not going anywhere. If your life has felt like a battlefield lately, if your mind has been louder than usual, if doubt has been visiting you more than faith, if people around you suddenly feel distant or critical, if your body feels tired in a way that sleep cannot fix, if temptation has been stronger than it has ever been, this is not a sign that you are failing. This is a sign that something inside you is threatening to change, grow, or lead, and that threat is being felt by forces that thrive on your stagnation. You do not go to war against someone who poses no threat. You go to war against someone who is about to shift the atmosphere. Let's talk about how this actually shows up in real life, because this is not abstract theology. This is your Tuesday morning. It shows up as sudden waves of self-doubt right before you were about to take a bold step. It shows up as an old wound resurfacing right when you finally started feeling stable. It shows up as a friend or family member questioning your new direction the moment you finally believed in it yourself. It shows up as exhaustion that hits you the second you sit down to pray, to write, to build, or to create. Even though you were fine all day until that exact moment, it shows up as comparison. Scrolling through someone else's life and suddenly feeling like everything you are doing is not enough. It shows up as isolation, a strange pull to withdraw from the very people and communities that would strengthen you. None of these things look supernatural on the surface. They look like normal life problems. And that is exactly the point. The most effective attacks never look like attacks. They look like Tuesday. This is where Lewis's insight becomes so important. He never portrayed temptation as something loud and obvious. He portrayed it as something disguised as reasonableness, the thought that tells you to rest today and try again tomorrow, and tomorrow becomes next week, and next week becomes never. The thought that tells you this dream is unrealistic, that you are too old, too late, too unqualified. The thought that convinces you that skipping prayer just this once will not matter. None of these thoughts announce themselves as spiritual warfare. They announce themselves as your own voice, your own logic, your own tiredness. That is what makes them so dangerous. You cannot fight what you do not recognize. So let me ask you honestly, and I want you to actually think about this, instead of just letting the words pass by. What is the one area of your life where you feel the most resistance right now? Is it your health? Is it your relationships? Is it your finances? Is it your purpose? Is it your faith itself? Whatever came to your mind just now, I want you to sit with the possibility that this is not the area where you are weakest. This might actually be the area where your breakthrough is closest. Resistance tends to concentrate around the exact door that leads to your next level, because that door threatens the current order of your life, and anything that threatens the current order will be defended by whatever benefits from you staying exactly where you are. I know this might be a lot to process, and if you're starting to feel a little uncomfortable right now, good, because comfort has never once changed a life. But I need you to keep watching, because if you stop here, you are only going to walk away with fear, and fear was never the point of this message. The point of this message is what comes next, so stay with me for just a little longer, because what I am about to share is going to completely shift how you respond the next time resistance shows up in your life. And trust me, you are going to want to know this before the next wave hits. Here's something most people never realize about being chosen. Being chosen was never a guarantee of an easy life. It was a guarantee of a meaningful one. Every single figure in Scripture who carried weight, who carried purpose, who carried destiny, faced resistance before they ever stepped into their calling. Not after, before. The resistance was not a detour from the plan. The resistance was part of the plan. Joseph was not thrown into a pit because he was forgotten by God. He was thrown into a pit on his way to a palace, and the pit was not evidence that he was abandoned. It was evidence that his life carried enough weight to be worth attacking. David was not hiding from Goliath's size. He walked toward it because he understood something the rest of the army did not, that the size of the opposition was actually proof of the size of what God had already placed inside him. If the giant in your life feels enormous right now, maybe that is not a sign of how weak you are. Maybe that is a sign of how much has already been deposited in you that the enemy is desperate to keep buried. This is the turning point I want you to remember long after this video ends. Stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to stop me from becoming? That single shift in the question changes everything. When you ask, why is this happening to me, you center yourself as a victim of randomness. But when you ask, what is this trying to stop me from becoming, you center yourself as a threat to something. And threats are never wasted on people who are going nowhere. Now let's talk about the tools, because awareness without action leaves you informed but still unprotected, and I refuse to leave you standing in the truth without also handing you the weapon. The first weapon is naming the thought instead of obeying it. The moment a wave of doubt, comparison, exhaustion, or hopelessness rises in your mind, do not treat it as fact, treat it as a visitor. Ask yourself, is this actually true, or is this simply loud? Most destructive thoughts are not defeated through willpower, they are defeated through identification. The instant you name a thought as an attack rather than as truth, you take away its disguise, and a disguise is the only real weapon it ever had. The second weapon is consistency over intensity. The enemy is not afraid of your occasional powerful prayer. The enemy is afraid of your daily, unremarkable, boring consistency. 5 quiet minutes of prayer every single day will do more long-term damage to spiritual resistance than one dramatic emotional breakthrough followed by 2 weeks of silence. Discouragement thrives on inconsistency, because inconsistency keeps you spiritually malnourished, weak enough to be knocked over by ordinary circumstances. Build a rhythm so small that you cannot justify skipping it, and protect that rhythm like your life depends on it, because in more ways than one it does. The third weapon is community. Isolation is one of the oldest and most effective strategies there is, because a person who is isolated has no one to remind them of the truth when their own mind starts lying to them. If you have been pulling away from people who genuinely strengthen your faith and your resolve, that withdrawal was not accidental, and it needs to be reversed intentionally. Reach out today, not tomorrow, today. Send one message to someone who speaks life into you, because the enemy has been counting on you staying quiet. The fourth weapon is gratitude, and I know this sounds almost too simple to matter, but gratitude interrupts the spiral of despair faster than almost anything else, because despair requires you to focus entirely on what is missing, while gratitude forces your attention back to what is already present. This is not about pretending everything is fine. It is about refusing to let your mind live exclusively in scarcity, while your circumstances are actively trying to convince you there is nothing left to be thankful for. The fifth weapon is remembering that you are not fighting for your worth. You are fighting from it. This might be the most important distinction of this entire message. So let it sit for a moment. You are not proving that you deserve to be chosen through this battle. You already were chosen before the battle began. The fight is not an audition for your value. The fight is confirmation of a value that was already settled long before resistance ever showed up. When you fight from identity, instead of fighting for identity, exhaustion turns into endurance, because you are no longer trying to earn something. You are simply defending something that already belongs to you. Let me give you a few more examples, because the more specific this gets, the more you are going to recognize your own life inside it, and recognition is where healing actually starts. Think about the person who finally decides to stop drinking, to stop numbing themselves, to stop hiding. And within days of that decision, old friends who represent that exact lifestyle suddenly reappear out of nowhere with an invitation. That is not coincidence. That is resistance responding to a threat. Think about the person who finally decides to leave a relationship that has been quietly draining them for years. And the very night they decide to leave, the other person suddenly becomes kinder, more attentive, more convincing than they have been in months. That softness did not appear because things were actually changing. It appeared because the decision to leave threatened something, and threatened things fight back with whatever tool works best in the moment. Think about the person who finally commits to their faith after years of distance, and almost immediately their week becomes chaotic, their car breaks down, their job gets harder, their family starts an argument out of nowhere. None of these things prove that faith was a mistake. They prove that faith was noticed. I want to slow down here for a moment, because I think it is important to say clearly that not everything difficult in your life is a spiritual attack. Sometimes a hard day is simply a hard day. Sometimes exhaustion is simply your body asking for rest, and sometimes a disagreement with someone you love is simply a disagreement. Nothing more, nothing hidden underneath it. Discernment matters here, because turning every inconvenience into a cosmic battle can become its own trap, a way of avoiding responsibility for your own choices by blaming everything on unseen forces. That is not what this message is about. This message is about a specific pattern, a pattern where resistance consistently and repeatedly shows up at the exact moment you move toward growth, toward healing, toward purpose, toward God. When that pattern repeats itself over and over across different seasons of your life, it stops being coincidence and starts being information. Here is another layer of this that rarely gets talked about. The attack does not always come as darkness. Sometimes it comes disguised as comfort. Sometimes the very thing trying to stop you from becoming who you were meant to be is not a crisis, but an easy way out. A distraction that feels harmless. A relationship that feels comfortable but leads nowhere. A job that pays well but slowly convinces you to abandon the dream you used to talk about with so much fire in your eyes. Lewis understood this too, the idea that the safest road to ruin is not one dramatic wrong turn, but a series of small, comfortable, almost imperceptible steps away from where you were supposed to be headed. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to abandon their purpose entirely. They simply say, not today, one day at a time, until years have quietly disappeared. If your life feels stagnant right now, ask yourself honestly whether you are being blocked or whether you have slowly been made comfortable in a place you were only ever meant to pass through. I also want to address something that a lot of people carry silently, which is shame around how long this battle has lasted. Maybe you feel like you should have overcome this by now. Maybe you feel embarrassed that you're still struggling with the same doubt, the same habit, the same fear you were dealing with a year ago, 5 years ago, maybe even longer. I want to gently push back on the idea that the length of a battle says anything about your worth or your faith. Some resistance is not designed to be defeated in a single decisive moment. Some resistance is designed to be worn down slowly through repetition, through small daily choices that eventually accumulate into a completely different life. If you are still standing, still trying, still watching a video like this one instead of having given up entirely, that alone is evidence of strength you have not given yourself enough credit for. Endurance is not the absence of struggle. Endurance is choosing to keep walking while the struggle is still very much present. Let's go one layer deeper, because I think this is the part that will stay with you the longest. Have you ever noticed how the enemy rarely attacks with something completely foreign to your personality? It usually attacks through an exaggerated version of something already true about you. If you are naturally analytical, it turns into paralyzing overthinking. If you are naturally caring, it turns into people-pleasing that costs you your own peace. If you are naturally ambitious, it turns into a relentless feeling that you are never doing enough, no matter how much you accomplish. This is important, because it means the war is not being fought against some abstract version of you. It is being fought specifically against the unique shape of who you are, which tells you something remarkable. Your specific gifts are exactly what is being targeted, because your specific gifts are exactly what the world actually needs from you. So the next time you notice that familiar pattern rising again, whether it is the overthinking, the people-pleasing, the restlessness, the sudden wave of not enough, pause for a second before you spiral into it completely. Ask yourself, is this simply my personality today, or is this my personality being weaponized against me right now? That single pause, that single moment of awareness, is often the difference between reacting the same way you always have and finally responding differently for the first time in a long time. If you have made it this far into this video, I want you to know that this is not an accident either. Most people who click on a video like this do not make it past the first 2 minutes, because the moment truth gets uncomfortable, distraction becomes very convenient. But you are still here. And I believe that is because some part of you already knew, before you even clicked play, that today was the day you needed to hear this. So let me say, the thing I have been building toward this entire time, the thing I want you to carry with you long after this video ends. You were never too far gone. You were never forgotten. You were never overlooked. The very fact that your life has felt like a battlefield lately is not proof that you were abandoned. It is proof that you were noticed. Nothing invisible fights this hard against someone who does not matter. Nothing bothers to disrupt a life that was never going to go anywhere. The resistance you have felt, the exhaustion, the doubt, the isolation, the sudden waves of hopelessness that seem to arrive at the worst possible moments. All of it has been circling around one undeniable truth that the darkness cannot stand. You were already chosen before the resistance started, before the doubt crept in, before anyone doubted you out loud, before you doubted yourself in silence. You were already chosen, and that choosing is exactly what everything has been fighting so hard to make you forget. So here's what I want you to do the next time this wave hits, and it will hit again, because that is the nature of any real war. It does not end after one battle. The next time exhaustion tries to convince you to quit right before your breakthrough, remember this video the next time doubt tries to whisper that you are behind, that you are too late, that you are not enough. Remember this video the next time isolation tries to pull you away from the very people who could remind you of the truth. Remember this video. You are not being punished. You are being pursued by purpose on one side and resistance on the other. And the fact that both are fighting for your attention tells you everything about how much your life actually matters. Before you go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer honestly, either out loud or in the comments below. What is the one area of resistance in your life that suddenly makes a lot more sense after watching this? Was it your health? Was it your relationships? Was it a dream you almost gave up on last month? Was it your faith itself, quietly slipping while you told everyone you were fine? Say it in the comments, because naming it is the first step to disarming it. And this community needs to hear that they are not the only one carrying this weight in silence. If this video reached you at exactly the right moment, and I believe it did, do not let it end here. Subscribe, because there is more of this coming. And the next message might be the exact word you need for the next wave before it even arrives. Share this with the one person who crossed your mind while you were watching, because chances are they need to hear this exact message today. And you might be the very reason it reaches them. And before you close this video, say this quietly to yourself, not for me, but for you. I was chosen before the attack began, and I will not let the attack convince me otherwise. Carry that with you. Not just today. Every single day the resistance tries to make you forget who you already are.